I'm continuing my reading, and what I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a little bit as I move along. Last videos I've been reading in the second book of Samuel. I am now in chapter 15. David's son Absalom has been brought back to Jerusalem and is finally reconciled with David after he killed his brother Amnon. Now, remember that after David's affair with Bathsheba, when Nathan reveals his sin, he declares God's judgment on him. He says that because you killed Uriah with the sword of the Ammonites, the sword will not leave your house. In other words, your family will be dealing with war and conflict for the rest of your life. You're never going to have peace again. And we see that very clearly. Amnon raped his sister Tamar. He was then killed by Absalom. Absalom has come back now. This is between 7 and 10 years after the affair with Bathsheba. So David is now probably in his 50s, late 50s. He's getting up there in years. And remember that Absalom is praised by the people for his beauty. And we already have seen the petulance of Absalom, and he didn't get his way. He wanted Joab to go in and persuade David to let him come back to court. Joab wouldn't come talk to him, and so he burnt Joab's field. We're seeing this here in Absalom. So now we'll get into some questions on that in a minute. Let us read this chapter 15. We will be dividing this into 2 different videos. So this first video will be the first 18 verses of chapter 15. Here we go. Absalom conspires against David and gains the support of the people. David flees, and Absalom enters Jerusalem. And it came to pass after this that Absalom prepared his chariots and horses and 50 men to run before him. And Absalom rose up early and stood beside the way of the gate. And it was so that when any man that had a controversy came to the king for judgment, then Absalom called unto him and said, Of what city art thou? And he said, Thy servant is of one of the tribes of Israel. And Absalom said unto him, See, thy matters are good and right. But there is no man deputed of the king to hear thee. Absalom said, Moreover, O that I were made judge in the land, that every man which hath any suit or cause might come unto me, and I would do him justice. And it was so that when any man came nigh to him to do him obeisance, he put forth his hand and took him and kissed him. And on this manner did Absalom to all Israel that came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Now there's a little confusion here, little controversy. Absalom is basically saying he's sitting at the gate of the city. Now remember, in the time of the judges, the gate is where you did your business. So if you had a judgment, if you had a quarrel, you would bring the elders to the gate of the city, and they would hear the case there, and the elders would decide the case, or the judge, if there was a judge available. And, when Boaz married Ruth, that whole transaction took place at the gate of the city. Now, Absalom is sitting at the gate, and the people come to the king. They're coming to David to get judgment. And Absalom saying, he says, the king is not deputed any to hear thee, saying, you've got a good cause. He hears them, he asks them what they're coming for. He says, oh, well, this is my cause. And he says, oh, yeah, that is a good cause. You should be heard, but too bad for you, the king, he doesn't have anybody to hear you. You're not going to get your cause heard. Now, is that true? Did David's court kind of collapse? And we're not getting real judgment anymore, that there's just too much internal strife within the court to really take care of the people like this? Or is Absalom just telling the people this and convincing them this? Now, when it's not really clarified, and some people say, well, some people think the appearance is that David's court is kind of collapsing. I kind of lean towards the idea that this is a lie. It is a deception by Absalom in his attempt to usurp the throne. And people recognize him, and they do it, they bow to him, they do him obeisance, but it says he goes down, he puts forth his hand, took them and kissed them. In other words, he is treating them as equal. So Absalom is setting himself up in the favor of the people. This kind of reminds me of modern politicians, the old cliche of you kissing the babies to ingratiate yourself to the mothers. This is kind of what he's doing. He is in a sense campaigning here for the people to join him. Anyways, verse 7. And it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said unto the king, I pray thee, let me go and pay my vow, which I have vowed unto the Lord in Hebron. For thy servant vowed a vow while I abode at Geshur in Syria, saying, If the Lord shall bring me again indeed to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. And the king said unto him, Go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. We got an issue here. Came to pass after 40 years. Now, if this was true, David would already be dead, because we know David lived 70 years. He was king for 40 years. This is taking place about 25 years, between 25 and 30 years after he became king. So what's the 40 years mean? What this is telling us, this isn't 40 years after Absalom came back to Jerusalem. I don't know why it's put this way. It's a very confusing thing. But what this is really saying is that Absalom is now 40 years old. Remember, Absalom was born in Hebron. Before David took Jerusalem, Absalom was born in Hebron just the year he was king, the year David was made king. Absalom was born. Or shortly before he was made king, really. Absalom was born. So this is what it seems to me. Absalom is saying Absalom is now 40 years old. Now, it could also be a mistranslation and should say 4 years. That is also a possibility. I will say that. Those are the two, in my mind, those are the two possibilities. Absalom is now 40 years old, which means we are getting very close to the end of David's time as king. And David would be in his 60s now, not in his 50s. Or it's supposed to be 4 years and not 40. But he is returning to Hebron because that is where David was originally king. But anyways, verse 10. But Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, As soon as ye hear the sound of the trumpet, then ye shall say, Absalom reigneth in Hebron. And with Absalom went 200 men out of Jerusalem that were called, and they went in their simplicity, and they knew not anything. And Absalom sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices. And the conspiracy was strong. For the people increased continually with Absalom. And there came a messenger to David, saying, The hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. And David said unto all his servants that were with him at Jerusalem, Arise, and let us flee, for we shall not else escape from Absalom. Make speed to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly, and bring evil upon us, and smite the city with the edge of the sword. And the king's servants said unto the king, Behold, thy servants are ready to do whatsoever my lord the king shall appoint. And the king went forth, and all his household after him. And the king left 10 women, which were concubines, to keep the house. And the king went forth, and all the people after him, and tarried in a place that was far off. And all his servants passed on beside him, and all the Ketherites, and all the Kerethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men, which came after him from Gath, passed on before the king. So, we're going to end that here for this video, but just understanding what's going on. Absalom went to Hebron because that's where David was first made king. And he is now saying, look, I am in Hebron, I am now king, and the people are flocking to him. Ahithophel, remember, Ahithophel is the grandfather of Bathsheba. He's probably remembering the affair of David and Bathsheba. Bathsheba has been David's wife now for 15 years or so, probably 20 or so. Ahithophel still remembers that affair. I think Ahithophel is still angry. It says he wasn't even in Jerusalem. He was in Gilo, his hometown. Now, it does say he was there making sacrifices, so he was probably back there with his family, but he joined the conspiracy against David. When David finds out that the people are flocking to Absalom in Hebron, he sees what's happening. He understands he doesn't want to put the city in danger. He knows that if he stays in Jerusalem, that Absalom is going to attack Jerusalem and the people are going to be injured. The people are going to be hurt. And so he says, to protect the people of the city so that we don't have to fight, we don't have to destroy the city, I and my servants, my house, and those who want to go with me, we will leave the city, and that way there is no war in the city. We don't have to destroy the city in this fight. But you'll note, 600 men went with him. It says the 600 men who are with him in Gath. These are the men who have been with him from the beginning, from the time that he fled from Saul. And they are all with him, and they are all fleeing the city. So, even at this point, David is trying to protect the people. The people are still David's primary concern. He's not saying, I need to protect my throne. He's not sending his men out to go and attack Absalom or saying, oh, we're going to stand our ground. He's saying, we need to protect the people, and to do that, we have to get out of the city. So, I'm going to leave that here, and we will read the rest of it in the next one.